My name is Javi Trujillo, and I am the Flash fan. And you're watching episode 10 of Up to Speed with Wally West. In today's episode, we're going to discuss The Flash, number 7, all the way back from September 1st, 1987. Before we get into today's issue, though, I do want to address some of the news that's gone on in the past few months. Predominantly the passing of artist Jackson Guice, whose art adorns the issue we're discussing today. He passed away May 1st, 2025 from pneumonia. Not only has he had a prolific career for both Marvel and DC, but he's worked on some of the biggest books, including movie adaptations like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. He had a great run on Action Comics, especially during the death and return of Superman. And of course, he launched the title that we're talking about. So I wanted to mention his passing and my condolences to his family and friends during what's been a difficult time for them, I'm sure. So with that, we'll get into today's issue. Flash Facts. The Flash number 7 was released, as I said, September 1st of 1987 per Mike's Amazing World of Comics. It was cover dated, though, December of 1987. Credits are as follows. Mike Baron, writer. Jackson Guice, penciler. Larry Malstead, inker. Steve Haney was the letterer. Carl Gafford was the colorist. And Mike Gold was the editor. And, of course, Wally West was created by John Broome and Carmine Infantino. So getting up to speed. This issue was called Red Trinity, and the story opens in Finland, near the Soviet border. Flash, Tina, and Dr. Bortz have traveled here to save the life of Jerry. And in order to do that, they need help from one of this Dr. Pyotr Orlov, who unfortunately is imprisoned inside a top-secret Siberian science center. So yes, I know it's been a minute, but Wally and Tina are together right now trying to help her husband. Wally races off, estranged husband. Wally races off to find a hidden camp, and Tina expresses her concerns. That causes Wally to have some deep thoughts as he races to the rescue. He's got a lot of guilt, understandably, and I find myself wondering yet again, like how much this must have felt like whiplash to readers in 1987. You know, people were so used to that clean-cut, bow-tie wearing Barry Allen. And Wally has some guilt over the lack of his relationship with his parents too, laying the groundwork for like years of stories to come. Predominantly, we're going back to this Wally and Tina relationship. And, you know, as he's running, he's just having all these thoughts, conflicting thoughts. And we'll get into that a little bit in the letters page too. Like, this isn't that far removed still from living with Francine, and already he's moved on to Tina. Is it because he's a 20-year-old with raging hormones? Is it because of his super speed and his perception is a little altered, so that feels like enough time for him? Combination of the two? I don't know. But Wally eventually locates the base, but it's still bright out. So he's got to wait as he sticks out like a sore thumb. You know, red costume against white snow. There's a great line about how he should have brought a white costume. And he builds a tent, eats a massive amount of protein bars there, and sleeps for 16 hours. Like, man, I wish I could do that. When he does infiltrate the facility, we get another wonderful line. Flash fact, if you will. Quote, "It's a little known fact of my existence that I move too fast to leave a scent for dogs." Like, it's just a fun little line that I really wouldn't have thought of, you know, how it's not a power per se, but that he's just moving so quickly that a dog wouldn't be able to sniff him out. I thought that was interesting. But the Flash finds Dr. Orlov quickly, because he's the Flash, with Dr. Orlov mistaking him for Anatoly, wondering where he got a costume from. The good doctor is speaking Russian, and the Flash is trying to understand him by hooking him up his transceiver to the Dome translation computer. It's out of range, but fortunately the doc speaks English. Phew. So he agrees to help Wally save Dr. McGee and lets Flash eat his cheese. But he does not want to leave because of his so-called children, and it's Holy, Bebic, and Cassiopeia. Now, these children of his genius are called Red Trinity, and their creation was inspired by the Flash. The book doesn't really get into if it was a Barry or a Wally thing, but I'm going to assume that he's been working for a while and it's Barry. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It was the Flash. In fact, Orloff calls him calls Wally their godfather, much to his own surprise. So, and it makes sense. You know, he was inspired by the Flash to create these experiments. So exposed, Red Trinity say they will hold the Flash for the authorities, and Flash takes it as a challenge. Dared to leave the room. If he can, he makes his attempt and is unsuccessful. And this whole sequence is a 2-page splash that Guice just kills. Like, you open it up, and I mean, the art's right here, right? But when you open it up in the actual comic, it's just, I mean, it looks great. And I love seeing like, it's great having the digital issues and even like the omnibus, but there's something about the way the colors pop on this printed page. I don't know if it's nostalgia or what, but I don't know. I just really dig it. So when the Flash realizes his attempts are futile, Red Trinity, or at least 2 of them, reveal that they want to go to America. And Cassiopeia is the lone dissenter, but he does not want to break up the group, so they agree to attempt to flee after a good night's sleep. Now, before they can get that good night's sleep, they are discovered by the captain, and he's onto their tricks. The Flash butts some heads together, and they all just basically make a run for it when they get surrounded by the guard. Like I said, they make a dash for the border. One of them's got this Dr. Orloff on his back, and they take off, and they're like, what about Blue Trinity? And Flash is like, what is a Blue Trinity? And they're like, well, they're like us, but not. And they're the older version, the prototypes. And, as they're telling Flash this, one of them's getting upset that, they're giving all their secrets to the American. But, they get chased down by some planes, but that doesn't really stop them at all, even though Red Trinity's getting a little bit fatigued by all this. But they do make their escape. The snow's coming down. They're stuck in a blizzard. And meanwhile, Tina's getting really worried at the border that they're not going to be able to make it out in time, that they're not going to find him. They haven't heard from Wally. Then they start to hear the planes, and her worry just increases. And she's like, I can't lose Wally and Jerry, because if she loses Wally, she's definitely losing Jerry because she won't be able to save him. She's just as conflicted in a relationship as Wally is. They see a flash of red, and it's the Flash with Red Trinity. They've got the Doctor. Tina's excited, but they're like, the reunion's short-lived, because lo and behold, Blue Trinity is right behind him, and the issue ends with Red meeting Blue, and a confrontation that's going to pick up in the next issue. But here's the kicker. Next issue, in between this and next issue, we have Millennium #1, and then we come back to the Flash #8 for a story that titled Purple Haze. So, a lot going on, as you would expect from a comic of this era. Want to touch on the letters page before we get to some overall thoughts, as we've got Fleet Sheet here. This is a little odd because it's it's a page and a half. The first page is in the middle of the book, and it's got a little continued at the end of the story note for you to go to. Flipping to the end here, we've got a house ad as well, in addition to the letters. So a couple things I want to point out. Really short letter here. Dear editor, you can tell when a comic book is doing good if a Teen Titan guest stars, you don't even mention it on the cover. That was Larry Lofton. Another one from Barry Nothstein. Editor, I am perplexed and disappointed that this magazine contains so much sexual content. No, it is not blatant, graphic, or obscene, just tasteless. It is unnecessary for this type of activity to continue in the pages of a, quote, comic book. Whatever happened to the days when a masterful comic writer could leave these kinds of things to the imagination? Was that so bad? I find Flash to be an unenjoyable reading experience. Wally's bed romping is something I don't need to be let in on. Anyway, I guess being as narrow-minded as I am, he uses a lot of air quotes. Being as narrow-minded as I am will save me 75 cents a month and an extra $1.25 during annual season. Thanks for listening to a fan, Barry Nothstein. Barry, I wish I could go back to the days of 75-cent Flash comics. But the editor replied, Wally's 20 years old, and it's unrealistic to portray all 20-year-olds as having no sex life. I think you'll be seeing Wally struggle with the challenge of finding a meaningful relationship as he matures. We appreciate your thoughts. I appreciate that they, printed this fan's complaints and addressed it in a respectful manner. I feel like that kind of discourse can get lost nowadays. So I appreciate that they gave him space and, kind of said, stick around for more. And there's a Kurt Craddock who also weighs in on the whole Wally, Tina, Frankie debate. They go on to point out that some guys just can't handle being dumped. Miss Kane is continuing to struggle with her identity in the pages of the new Teen Titans. Will she confront Wally? Will Wally mature emotionally? And if he does, will he feel like a heel for the way he's treated his former lover? We'll see. And that's kind of what's part of the fun right now, is they are giving themselves all these different story avenues that we didn't necessarily get to see with Barry Allen. And not to say that he didn't have romance problems, because he did, especially, once Iris died. But didn't die, but he thought she was dead, and he tried to get married or remarried to someone else. So, it speaks to, Wally's got some room for improvement, and that it was definitely, they weren't just doing this willy-nilly. It feels like there was a purpose for where they were going with this, and it takes a really long time, but that also is kind of how life is, it just doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual change. And again, one of the things I keep harping on is that's why I love this character, this iteration of the character, because you do see this growth in this character arc, and he learns from behavior that's not the best and becomes a better person, especially when you look at where he is now as a father of two. Andrew Kunka ends their letter with, one question before I go. How do you pronounce Kilgore? Wally and other characters don't seem to have too much of a problem saying it. Anyway, thank you for your time and a great comic. And they said, Wally mimics the way Kilgore pronounces his name. I wish I was there to hear it. And then T.M. Maple writes in again from the Great White North of Canada. And I still think Kilgore is an overly cutesy name, but a good character. So they reply, so how do you pronounce Kilgore, TM? If we ever see the return of this guy, I think we'll start a pronounce the villain's name contest, which we will. And actually not that long ago in Action Comics, I think it was G. Willow Wilson used Kilgore against Superman at the Fortress of Solitude. So next month, first check out the 8-part weekly miniseries Millennium. Our saga subplot continues over there. Then our story returns to Flash number 8 for Purple Haze. Join us. You'll be glad you did. So that is up to speed with issue 7 of The Flash. I thought it was a pretty solid issue. Baron really hits home characterization both on Wally and Tina. He adds to the Flash canon with Red and Blue Trinity, which I think is really important. Even though, Baron eventually leaves the book and gets replaced, these characters go on. Some of them even make it into Mark Waid's run. Actually, I think all of them do. from Red Trinity at least, and definitely a member of Blue Trinity, make it at least until the issue, into the past the hundreds on this book. So they're laying some groundwork here that is going to pay off in years to come. And like I said, there's a really good balance of, we get action, we get some characterization for Wally and Tina, and we get these new heroes that also have their own little arcs as they, try to become American citizens. And to talk about Jackson Guice, like, just solid work. Panel layout is great. I mentioned that spread that I really loved. And, I've had my own little journey about the lightning bolt not facing the correct way, like how Barry's was and how it later gets depicted. And it doesn't take me out of the story like it used to. So I'm happy that I've grown a little bit when it comes to that. But just a lot of fun. And I love how we just see Wally break out of some of these panels as he's running. Like, he breaks the frame. We got a great blur effect as he's running across the snow. I always love to see like the streak of speed as Wally goes by, and it's just a solid book. It feels like so many times like a book's got to be a big event and major things have to happen, and some important developments I think happen. New characters get introduced, but there's just something to be said for reading a solid comic book that takes you more than 5 minutes to read and you get a good romp out of it. So it's definitely, we're getting into some exciting stuff. Not that the Speed Demon arc wasn't exciting, we're still continuing that, but I like where this book is going right now, and we'll have to see where things pick up with Millennium and how that affects the Flash. So that's going to do it for this episode. Hopefully we get these things done in a timely manner. We've got a lot of Absolute Flash to talk about as well. We've a few issues into that arc, and they're kind of pulling a Jeff Johns with a little bit of a rogue spotlight issue. And that's been a lot of fun too, but you'll have to tune in to the next episode to see my thoughts on the last few Absolute Flash issues. But until then, thank you for watching so much. I'm Javi Trujillo, and now you are up to speed with Wally West. Take care.